Hello, welcome to Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell at Inside the Birds presentation. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside Adam Caplan, and joining us every week to break down the tape of the Eagles game is NFL Film senior producer Greg Cosell. He's also the star of ESPN's NFL Matchup Show and, of course, the Inside the Birds pregame show. Guess what, fellas? The Eagles actually won their ninth straight game on Sunday. That's right. They got to 11-2 by beating the Carolina Panthers 22-16 at the Link. And while sometimes fans get blamed, Greg and Adam, for treating wins like losses, I think this time you can look at some of the players and say, hey, they're the guilty parties this time, because there was not only A.J. Brown, a decent number of voices in the locker room to express some dissatisfaction with the passing offense. A.J. Brown just being the most attention getting. Greg, we've talked all week, all year long, really since the bye week, right? That this is a run first offense. The pass game takes a backseat to Saquon Barkley and the rushing attack.
Yeah.
And I think by and large, the team has been okay with that. They've won 9 straight games. But in the last few weeks, and we'll talk about the tape against the Panthers, there's been a part of the pass offense that was there before, but not here. And that's the explosive play element to the game. It's really glaringly been absent from the team for the last few weeks. And that's where I think the players are probably most upset, because those were always needed. The passing game might be second fiddle, but the explosive pass play games in each one of those games during the win streak would be very important up to the last few weeks. So when you watched the Carolina Panthers tape, did that stick out to you, that not only is the pass game maybe not as functional as it's been, but the explosive pass play game is not there?
Well, it's certainly not there. The question is why. It's interesting because on the second play of the game this week, which was I guess the first play was a Johnson holding penalty, so I guess technically it was the first real play of the game. They attempted a vertical play. They went with a 3-level stretch to the boundary, and Brown ran the deep sail or the deep corner, and it was there. Now, again, it's first and 20. What we don't know, and this I think you have to be careful about, is we don't know when the play's called what is said in Jalen's, earpiece. We don't know that. Maybe he said, "Hey, if you have it, throw it. If you don't, check it down. It's first and 20." You don't know any of that.
Right.
But if you're just looking at it as an abstraction, as a play, that deep sail was there, and maybe another time Jalen throws that. Right now, he's clearly, and again, this is what the tape shows. So we're not making a judgment about his whole career or what's going to happen this week against the Steelers or in the future. But right now, he's not particularly decisive in the pocket. I don't think he's seeing it with the clarity that's needed. And therefore, the result of that is that he's just not turning it loose on throws that by NFL standards are there. Okay, now.
Greg, go
ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say on that, with our Patreon members on Tuesday night, you talked about it's just the timing of the marriage between the run and the pass game. Just didn't seem to be there. What can you explain what that means? Because sometimes we think we know, but maybe we don't. Go ahead.
And that's something that, again, I hope people understand, and you guys know me, and I hope people have listened to me for a number of years. I'm just not a believer in ripping coaches because, I know how hard I work, so I know how hard they work, and they know more than I do about their team and their players. But to me, when you run the ball exceptionally well, as the Eagles do, and their run game's pretty multiple in terms of their concepts, I always feel, and the Kyle Shanahans, the Sean McVays of the world have done this for years and years and done it at a really high level. You see the Lions do this now at a very high level. You want your run game and your play action pass game to look the same until the quarterback passes the mesh point. And because second level defenders are playing the run first, particularly if it's first and 10 or a normal down and distance play, 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4. And watching the Eagles tape, you don't see that a lot. You don't see a play action pass game working off the run game. I personally think part of that is that they're not under center very much. I think that is far more effective when you're under center. Now, again, now you get into what we don't know. Is Jalen Hurts not comfortable under center? Is he not comfortable turning his back to the defense? A lot of quarterbacks are not. That's not a fatal flaw. This is not a knock on Jalen Hurts that, oh my God, he can't play because he doesn't like turning his back to the defense. But more often than not, the play action pass game in marrying up with the run game works better and more efficiently when the quarterback is under center, what I would call conventional play action.
Right. I think sometimes a two-game sample is just too small, right? And
Yep.
then sometimes it's the harbinger for things to come. You watch more tape than anybody, Greg, but just me as an Eagles reporter and Adam, I mean, I remember some pretty ugly stretches for Donovan McNabb, who I still think is the best quarterback in this franchise history, or at least since Jaworski. But then I also remember him coming right back at it. He's a different player. Everybody's different. I'm just saying we don't know, and obviously they have the Steelers up, Washington after that. We'll get a bigger sample size if
Yep.
this is just a little bit of a rut, because I think some of the throws that we're going to look through, like the one you talked about, the sale to AJ, that's a throw outside the numbers that's deep that Jalen in the past has pulled the trigger on and seems to like to pull the trigger on, that
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, for whatever reason, there's some reluctance. But I think the overriding point is when you run the ball as well as the Eagles do, I don't want to say automatic, but a good play action pass game should really be a staple of what you're doing. And right now, it just hasn't been.
And I would agree with that. And I know we'll look at that first play, but because it was 1st and 20, again, we may not have enough information there about what he
Right.
was told when he was given the play. Maybe if you're in the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter, in a one-score game, maybe that's it. He's told something different when he's given the play. We
Hmm.
don't know the answer to those questions. And so I'm trying to supply context because I can tell you what the film shows, and there's no question that he's not seeing things well right now. There's no question about that,
Right.
and he's not being decisive at all. And that's the result of him not seeing it the way he needs to see it.
Right.
As I mentioned to the Patreon group, I actually thought, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. I actually thought he made the wrong read on the 2 touchdowns as well, but they turned out to be touchdowns.
Mhm.
But you know, because they do run the ball really well, and because their defense has played at a high level, especially since Cooper DeJean became the nickel, there's a sense that, hey, this is how we best can play. Now, that in and of itself is telling everybody we don't have to interpret that, guys. Again, Adam knows my whole feeling about that a team tells you how they feel about their quarterback by how they play.
Mhm.
Okay, so they're telling you that right now we can win a certain way, and our quarterback, we don't need him right now, but we also aren't sure of what he can do and what he can't do right now with the way in which he's playing.
Got it. Got it. Before we get to the clips, one last thing. I don't want this to be like a all negativity show after
No,
a win.
yeah,
Give me a couple. We know they played a lot of 11 personnel with Dallas
yeah,
Goedert
a
out.
lot more.
How did you view Grant Calcaterra as sort of the number one tight end and the running game in general, which I thought featured some interesting misdirection and some good lanes for Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought that the run game looked pretty much like it always does. The thing about the run game, and when you have a good defense, you can do this, is the run game is an attrition game for the most part, in that you're going to have, 2 yards, 3 yards, 7 yards, -1, 3 yards, 4 yards. In Barkley's case, maybe 20 yards. But I mean, the run game is something you have to stay with. So, and a lot of coaches aren't willing to do that. In that sense, you can give Kellen Moore a ton of credit, but that's also becomes a function of your defense because obviously, if the other team is scoring, I mean, think of it this way, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this watch the Bills and the Rams on Sunday. Okay,
Hmm.
everybody said, "Oh, what's going on with the Bills? They didn't run the ball." Well, when the other team starts scoring and you get that snowball feeling that the other team's going to keep scoring, it's really hard for coordinators to stay with the run game. It becomes a human nature thing.
It does. What they do is they feel the pressure to score to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with. I've actually asked that question
Yeah.
As you brought it up, go say, hey, what was your thinking? Why did you up the tempo? The way, and they hate to say it, but the way that our defense is playing, we felt we needed to score.
Yeah.
Look at the
And
Super Bowl, by the way, when the Eagles won it against New England. You got to keep passing.
yeah, yeah. And when you had Josh Allen, you always feel like, hey, you know what? Maybe we'll put the ball in his hands.
Yeah, you
But I
had a
mean,
chance. Yeah.
so the thing is, you can stay with the run game when you're kind of controlling the game, or the game is certainly close enough that there's no issues. Because even when the Eagles fell behind against Carolina, it wasn't like it was always one score, and the game was never out of the Eagles' control.
Right, right. All right, let's take a look at some clips from this game against the Panthers. We'll start with offense as we've been talking about it. We're going to start with the play that we were referring to, which is
The
the
first and 20 play?
and 20 play. Yes.
Yeah. No, this
Sale.
play I know extremely well, obviously.
Yeah, I want to have you add context too, because I know that this play has sort of been out there and a lot of different analysts have already analyzed it. But
Yeah.
first, go ahead and set it up.
Well, it's the first series, and they had a holding penalty on their true first play. So this is technically their first official play, and it's first and 20. So now what they decide to do is they decide to call a vertical route concept to the boundary. They call a three-level stretch. So people understand what that means is you have a vertical route, you have an intermediate route, and you have a short route. And you call it predominantly to attack zone because you're going to get zoned from pretty much every team on first and 20. So you pretty much know you're going to get zoned. So this is a zone beater type concept. So, I don't know if you want to run it, Geoff, but I mean, so what
Sure.
ultimately the player that Jalen is throwing this off of is number 8, J.C. Horn. He's going to be the read here. Okay, it's very basic. It's a one read situation.
Mhm.
And by the way, that's true with every flood, which every team runs. So I don't want people to think, oh, you mean Jalen can't, he's not smart. It's only one read. No, no, that's what this concept is. It would be the same for Tom Brady.
Right.
That's the read. Okay,
Mhm.
so you're working off J.C. Horn, and you're reading him. Okay, now DeVonta Smith actually he breaks inside before he breaks outside because he wants that underneath hook defender to think that he's going inside and therefore he can stay inside and not be a factor on this throw because 25 is going to have to react up to Dotson in the flat. So
Mhm.
if you just run this a little further, you'll see what happens. Now, first of all, he's got a pristine pocket. Freeze it right here.
Oh
So
yeah.
right now, and this is what you're taught, by the way. I remember many, many years ago, Marty Morningwig sitting in my office, and we were talking about quarterback reads, and they talk a lot about body position of defenders. Okay, so
Mhm.
look at J.C. Horn now. Look at his body position. He's leaning forward. He's getting ready to sit on
He's
the
8, right?
outbreaking route by
Yep.
DeVonta Smith.
Yeah,
Right
he's
here
Okay,
at the
number 8. Yep.
35-yard line,
Yep.
right.
Got it.
looking at Devontae.
So he's now body position wise not in position to play the deep sail by A.J. Brown, and the
Right.
safety's not a factor at all. Look where he is. He's not a factor at all.
Right.
So now,
Mhm.
and Jalen's in a pristine pocket. So as a pure abstraction, forgetting that it's first and 20, forgetting that it's the first play of the game, as a pure abstraction, when you call this play, you've gotten what you want to throw the deep sail.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep. And
I'm
now
trying to
I
be.
want to add to this because a lot of people, Greg, have said, well, Jalen can't process. He doesn't know what he's seeing or he doesn't know the defense. And if you listen to Jalen Hurts in the post-game press conference, he explained this play very meticulously. And here's what might be a little concern, though,
I
is
didn't hear it. So what did he say?
he said his first read was to Devontae, and that he could have alerted to AJ Brown. He said, I know I could have alerted to AJ
Yeah,
Brown there.
it's
He
funny you
said,
said
but
that
I
because
but I
almost always the first read in flood is the intermediate outcut.
Right. So he's
Right.
not necessarily doing anything wrong to your point,
Right.
but he said, I saw JC Horn there falling off, and I didn't want to. He basically said, I don't want to throw and give Horn a
Ah,
chance. But
I see that.
that's where you wonder about like the confidence, because as you pointed out here, look at Horn's leverage to the inside receiver
Yep.
here, and he's breaking AJ Brown to the sideline. He could have Tyreek Hill change of direction and Deion Sanders' skill and not be able to
No.
reverse course in time to make a play on this ball.
No. And by the way, based on what you told me with Jalen, I understand his thought process,
Yep.
you know, but again, I'd love to be in the meeting on Monday, be a fly on the wall and know what when they discuss this play,
Hmm.
what they say, what the coaches say. That's what I'd
Right.
love to know
Greg,
because
but here, on a follow up for that, see as we see this play uh, develop, the old the old Hurts from 2 years ago, I think would have cut it loose to throw it to AJ maybe. Just
I would agree.
I think even just from a few weeks ago, I honestly think that, he's made
I
this
don't
throw
know.
this year many times and just for whatever reason did not. Even on some deep, quick comebacks, I thought in the past he's made throws, but in this game just looked reluctant.
Watch him turn his shoulder. He's already put it in his mind. I'm throwing it short. Like
By the
he's
way, yeah,
Well,
by the
well,
way,
well, well, once you make the bottom line, Adam, is once that time starts clicking and the internal clock goes off,
yeah.
and you don't turn it loose to either Smith or to AJ in the timing of the
Yeah.
play, then you got to throw the check
And you
down because
check it down.
then
Yeah,
you're
right.
late. Then you're
yeah,
late. You can't
yeah.
throw
No,
it.
I'm just saying. But he made a decision. He was not going to throw it to AJ. I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah. And last thing I would say is a couple of weeks ago, we highlighted a play, not last week against the Ravens, but maybe three or four, where he did a really nice two-step pocket climb to continue to
Yeah,
use the nice semicircle around him and then be able to step into that throw. And here he does, you can tell he's mentally decided not to do it because he's not even taking that two steps up in the pocket to
but
make the
but the
throw.
the other thing to keep in mind, and
Hmm.
again, all we're doing is walking through all the elements of the play.
Right.
This is not a knock. We're just walking through the elements.
Hmm.
But they called this play for a reason. They knew they were going to get zone. They knew that J.C. Horn was the read because that's the read. As you just told me, Jalen said in the press conference, and I knew that. I've been doing this, for a few years. That's the
Hmm.
read.
Right.
So the read did tell you to throw the ball deep. Now, on 1st and 20, are you going to yell at him? No, of course they're grown men. You don't yell at them. But are you going to be mad at him for not throwing it? Probably not. But
Hmm.
you call the play for a reason. That's the play.
Right. All right, so there was a play, I believe, either later in that quarter or early in the second that we're going to take a look at. Now, to set it up, we totally understand that 3rd and 18 is not a very easy down in the NFL to make a play, but sometimes there's a play that can be made, Greg. And
No,
what
but
happened?
it's interesting as you can see the way the Panthers are playing. They're really not playing. Like if you looked at the way their defense is aligned, you wouldn't say it's 3rd and 18.
Right,
They're
not
not
the
playing
sticks
this, and
defense here.
they're
Yeah.
not playing it in a prevent look at all. They're lining up in a normal way. They've got what a lot of teams have, which is a loaded front, three D linemen to one side of the center, with
Hmm.
the D end opposite in a wide nine. They've got three underneath, two deep. I mean, this just looks like a normal defense right now.
Right. By the way, probably because if they feel like if they give up an easy 12 on 3rd and 18, the Eagles might go for it there on 4th down where they're really successful.
And that's what you got to, and by the way, you make a great point there, Geoff. That's something that the Eagles do a lot and do well is if they get to fourth and under 5 yards, depending on where they are on the field, it's
Hmm.
very legitimate that they'll go for it.
Yeah.
There's not many teams in the league that do that, but you have to factor that into the Eagles equation when you play them defensively, is that, it gets to be 4th and 3. That's not an automatic punting situation for the Eagles.
Right. And it's good. You could get a look of a where that you want to make a play against as opposed to the sticks defense where you have to throw it underneath
Right.
once you're getting an
And that's
interception.
another great point. It may be one reason why a lot of teams may not play sticks against them because you play sticks because you're willing, if it's 3rd and 15, that hey, if they gain 13 yards, they're going to punt. Well, the Eagles may not be punting on 4th and 2.
Exactly.
You
All right.
know,
So this is 3rd and 18. You mentioned the
yeah,
loaded front with the Panthers here on the left side. And I can run it a little bit so we can
yeah,
talk
running it a little bit
what they do
because
defensively here. Winds up being a four-man rush.
right, it's a four-man rush, and he has eyes on DeVonta. Okay,
Hmm.
and that's where he's initially looking. That's who he in their reading progression on this play, he's looking at DeVonta. Now, again, maybe he's uncertain of the coverage, but DeVonta clearly there's a guy right there, and DeVonta's not going to be open. I mean, it's pretty evident. And
Right.
the only way he'd be open is if he's going to run some kind of crosser across his face, but that's not the route. He's
Right.
basically running a sit route right in front of Jalen. And the guy is sitting right there. So you
Hmm.
got to get off that pretty quick. It's pretty evident that that's kind of dead.
Right.
So now look at the stop it one sec, Geoff, right here. This is perfect because look at the overall route concept, which is a very common one. Again, there's not 1,000 route concepts. No one is reinventing the wheel with their route concepts. So what you're getting is you're getting a sit route, you're getting a flat route. So what does that do? It opens the window for the curl route by Dotson. It
Hmm.
open that this is the design of the play. Sit, flat, curl, open the window.
Hmm.
So if this ball should be out of his hands already
Right.
to
And
Dotson.
just that second or two, because he's throwing the ball now, and he gave
Right.
the
He's too
defender a
late on the
chance.
throw.
Yep.
And again, this is what I was speaking about that right now, again, I'm not making a judgment about the past or the future, but right now he's just not eliminating and isolating quickly enough.
Right.
So this play by design worked perfectly, and he was late with the throw to the receiver that he should have gone with pretty much right off the bat because DeVonta was dead, right? After 4 steps, DeVonta's dead.
Right. And by the way, to our point, let's say the ball's out now and he catches it. Instead of catching it here, let's say he catches it
Well,
here.
then you're in a 4th and 3 or 4
There
mode,
you
and
go.
you
You
might
got a
go for
chance
it.
to make a play. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So
Uh,
again, that's what the tape is showing now. There's just kind of a delay in his processing that he's just in the NFL, if you're a half a beat slow, that's like for a normal person being an hour late. That's the way the NFL is in the pass game. And his processing is just a little slow. He's not seeing it exactly the way he needs to.
And the elimination part would have been eliminating Devontae that because it's not there.
Right,
You
right.
eliminate it
Because
immediately.
he's running a sit route. He's running right to where the guy's sitting,
mhm.
So you got to know pretty quick. I mean, I remember for years and years, and Adam, you may remember this too, but obviously I was with him more with Ron
Yep.
Jaworski, and
Yep.
and that's what he would say. Like, he says, "So that's dead." Sometimes he'd say that even before the snap of the ball. He'd go, "Oh, that's dead." You just got to know when you can't make, when a guy's just that's not going to be the throw.
Right.
Gotcha.
All right. Let's give Jalen Hurts some credit here because it's not like all was bad.
This the Smith
And
27-yarder.
yep, we're going to discuss
Yeah.
his reaction here on the Smith 27
Yeah,
yarder.
and
And this is important.
this is what he does really, really well. This was the first TD drive, the third possession,
Hmm.
10 play, 70-yard touchdown drive. Um, and this is what he can do really well and actually move to his left here, which you don't see very often.
Correct. And obviously, you see they're in 11 personnel, which, by the way, we did mention they played how much? 70% 11 personnel?
They only played 8 snaps with 12 in the whole game.
Wow, interesting. And I know people might say, well, that's because Dallas Goddard didn't play, but there have been other games this year where Goddard didn't play that they were much heavier in 12 personnel. So to me, this was
I'm
matchup.
sure it did factor in, though, in this particular game.
And Johnny Wilson obviously is a quasi tight end anyway, so he's part of
Yeah.
that 11 personnel.
They used him interestingly. They would put him in like some jet motion and run him up the middle as a blocker
Yeah,
a
it's
couple of times. So he
wild.
did look like a tight end in that regard.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So Greg, we've got your what would you call this? Three 1 by 3 or
By one, and
3 by 1?
DeVonta Smith is the boundary X.
Right. He's right here
And
at
this
the
is what we
boundary.
talked about leading up to the game is that J.C. Horn is not going to follow A.J. Brown. He's their boundary corner. So
Right.
he's to the boundary, so he's over Smith here.
Yep. There's J.C. Horn, and the Panthers are showing blitz right here. There's putting 6
Well,
guys.
they're in a double mug.
Yeah,
So
double
the
mug.
Panthers are in a 6-man double mug front. They're not a heavy blitz team, so my guess is uh, that they're probably not thinking that both guys are not going to come. Is it
Right.
possible one does, but
Mhm.
both guys are not going to come.
Right. And to your point,
And
both
they both
are
drop
actually
out.
drop. Right.
Yeah.
And so what you have here, and I thought, by the way, the Panthers did a good job on defense at times, like, just covering up defenders and
So
staying
they're
close.
playing. So here's what the coverage is. Freeze it right here. They're playing quarters to the top, to the trip
Mhm.
side, and they're playing cover 2 to the boundary. So this is what we call cover 6, which is halves to the boundary and quarters to the field. That's
Right.
what they're playing because you'll see that J.C. Horn allows Smith to run by him because in
Mhm.
cover 2 he's a flat defender. He's not going to carry DeVonta Smith. Now
Right.
he gets depth and sinks a bit because there's no flat. There's no threat in the flat, so he doesn't have to hug up. But
Right.
but you notice he's not running with Smith because he's a flat defender.
Correct. And the context we need to bring to this, because I've heard it said out there, and I think maybe Acho or one of the analysts pointed out that, oh, he should have had DeVonta Smith way earlier because he's wide open here. That's not fair because his first read apparently looks to take him to the right side of the field. He can't
He's
see.
reading to the trip side of the field. So
Right.
that's a pointless statement. He's reading, which is more often the case. Most of the time, if you end up going to your boundary X right away, it's
Hmm.
because it's man coverage and he's going and you feel like, hey, my guy can win.
Right.
Okay. But when it's zone, I would say a high percentage of the time you're working to the trip side. Now, again, I don't know who they were trying to get here.
Hmm.
Could you make, could you make the argument that is that Calcaterra number three to trips?
I believe it is Calcaterra. Yeah.
I mean,
The on the
could this,
right here.
ball have been thrown on a stick throw into the window? But I don't think he's looking there. I actually think he's looking outside.
Yeah, I
So
thought he
again,
was looking for
Clearly
AJ.
is.
I
Clearly.
think he's looking for AJ.
Look
Yeah.
at his alignment of his shoulders.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is this somewhat of a
And by
smash
the way,
because you have a
I think
yeah, go ahead.
you could argue again if you look, just being honest and being as fair as possible, you could make the argument he could have thrown this ball to AJ, but
Right.
Yes.
he didn't.
Right. Is this what you call a dagger where the number two runs straight and then the number one kind of runs?
No, Dagger would be the inside guy runs
Oh,
vertically.
right.
The outside guy
Okay,
runs
my
the
fault.
dig.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he for whatever reason, and the coverage wasn't bad, maybe he
No,
just
but he could have
feel like
thrown
he could
this.
do it.
He could
He
have
could
thrown
have,
this.
but he does a nice
Outside
job
shoulder. Yeah.
as you go back to the pocket, which is giving him really nice protection. He, as you mentioned, Greg, he doesn't always go to his left, and here he does, and is able to find DeVonta Smith along the
Yeah,
left
then he
side.
makes a play. The statement about throwing to Smith right away is wrong because that's not the read. That's
Right.
not where his eyes were going.
Yeah, that would be very unfair to
See,
add.
that's the
to
kind
make
of
that
stuff that
play.
always bothers me because you got to understand, you know, the read, and I mean that was not the look to start.
Yeah. One play that I wanted another one. All right, Greg, here's an interesting play. This is in the third quarter, and I believe it's the opening drive. The Eagles, after a first down incompletion, ran the ball 7 straight times down to into Carolina's territory, but eventually they had to, as we always say, you got to make third downs and execute here. But this is not necessarily on Jalen, and we'll talk about what happens because the Panthers are going to bring pressure here.
Yeah, this is a mistake in protection because you never let anybody through the A gap clean.
Right.
So this is just a mistake. And when a guy gets clean through the A gap, particularly a first level guy,
Mhm.
that's rarely on the quarterback because it's just too quick.
Now it looks.
And by the way, they're
Mhm.
not dealing with this. The receivers are not dealing with this as if there's going to be a problem with protection because nobody up top, as you can see,
Mhm.
is breaking off their routes. So, you know,
Correct.
there was no sense here that there'd be an issue in protection because, by the way, they're blocking with 7.
Right. And I think that answers the question of people saying, well, why wasn't there a hot route against the blitz?
Because
And
they're
that's
blocking with
because,
7.
right, they're blocking with 7.
Yeah.
Saquon is in to stay. Now, the question is at center here with Jurgens, right? It looks like he's passing off or just doesn't engage any further with a defender who just has
You
a
have it,
free
you
ride.
have it from the end zone, Jeff?
I do. We will take a look at that right now.
All right, so the, he's got to block Robinson.
Hmm.
Jurgens just makes a mistake.
Right.
Mhm.
It's just a
Now, is
mistake.
Saquon, is
It
Saquon
happens.
also supposed to pick up somebody here? Not really,
Saquon
because
is
it's
looking
6-on-6.
for anybody. Keep in mind, go back. It's 6-on-6. They're
Right.
blocked. Calcaterra is a primary pass protector here.
Yep, on
So
the right side
yeah,
there. Yep.
yeah. So they've got 3-on-3 to that side, with Calcaterra's side. Now
Mhm.
98 drops out, but you don't know that. And then they got 3-on-3 to the others. They're fine. They're
Yeah.
totally fine.
Yeah. This is just and it looks like Cam is passing him off to help. And
Yeah. It's weird.
it's just a communication breakdown. It had to have been.
It's just a mistake. It's a
Yeah.
mistake.
Because he didn't try to block him. He had his hand on him and he moved
No,
off.
he's passing him. In his mind,
Yes.
he's passing him off.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring to light because, when AJ Brown says passing game and people say it's just the quarterback, no, there were other things that
Yeah.
were problematic in that game that don't always have to be on the quarterback. So we're just trying to be
Because
fair
that,
to Jalen Hurts on
yeah,
that.
and that was a 7-man protection, probably what, a 7-step drop, I
It's
would
a
think.
seven-man protection. They ran deeper routes, so
Right.
Yeah, that was a deep
yeah,
drop by
that was not on Jalen Hurts
that
by
was going to
any.
be a deep drop by Hurts, and that probably was going to be a deeper throw.
Yeah,
All right. Last one offensively. We're going to look at the Grant Calcaterra touchdown because I believe you're correct on both touchdowns. I think Jalen made it harder on himself than it had to be. So here's the Calcaterra one.
yeah. So this one, um, I mean, again, I'm just telling
Mhm.
you what I think based on doing this for years. So look what he's got to the bottom of the screen. Okay, he's got his two best receivers. He's got Smith in the slot and Brown outside. All right. So
Mhm.
now, to me, that's where you look. I mean, that's the play.
Mhm.
Okay. So, what's going to happen here? They're both aligned to the field. They run a two-man smash concept. Okay. Brown's
Mhm.
going to smash is Brown's going to run the slant and Smith is going to run the corner route. Okay. Both guys would end up being wide open. Okay.
Yes.
But he only takes a cursory look over there.
Right.
So I personally think that that's wrong. I'm trying to put as much context to it as possible, but why do you put your two best receivers to one side and run this route concept? I mean, look at Brown. In the
Yeah.
NFL, that's wide open,
Yep.
particularly in the red zone.
That's a
It's just
touchdown.
red
There's
zone.
there's
Absolutely a
there's like
touchdown.
very few bodies even close to
Yeah,
being able to
Yeah,
make a
stick it
play.
on
that's
Brown. If you don't like that, Smith wins on the corner route.
Yeah.
I mean, Smith is more wide open on this corner route than he was on his first touchdown. So, I mean, to me, again, I'm just trying to be as fair as possible, but I don't know why he's not throwing this ball.
Right.
Because then obviously he comes back to Calcaterra, who adjusted his route because this became a late in the down throw, and you can't say, "Oh my God, terrible play." But again, I just don't think what he's supposed to be seeing right now is registering the right way.
Right.
I
There you
mean,
go.
that ball's got to be thrown to me because don't forget, go back to the very beginning. Let's watch him drop. Okay, one.
Three.
Plant. See, he doesn't even plant correctly here.
Yeah.
His footwork's messy. He should have been planting right without that little extra hop back.
Yep.
His footwork is messy here.
Yeah. I feel like he
And
actually invited a little bit of pressure in
right,
his
because he
face
should
by
have
doing
planted
that.
and he should have stuck it on AJ. And
Yeah.
that's my
Now,
way of
that
thinking.
ball should have been out.
Yeah.
Yep.
He
I
had
have the end zone angle, by the way, because it kind of shows you again. You'll
cool.
see him, you'll see AJ just cross into a sea of nobody
That's the point.
He
He
should
had
have
no
put right there.
26.
You see how
right here.
instead of planting, he took that little hop back.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He should
I
have
mean,
planted and stuck it on AJ. So, and that's been another concern over this stretch is that his feet have been a little messy.
right. And that's something, Adam, for context purposes, that's Doug Nussmeier's job to work with
Yep.
him
Yep.
really every
Yep.
day on footwork and
And by
fundamentals.
the way, we don't know how that, they could be working on it. We
Oh yeah,
don't
I'm not
know.
saying that
That's
they're
the
not.
stuff we don't
Yeah,
know. But you're
yeah,
right. That's the quarterback coach's job.
yeah. It was a nice throw. I mean, just he made it
And then
harder on
in
himself
the
than he
end,
had to.
then he did this.
Yeah,
But for the people who say, "Oh well, you're nitpicking, it doesn't matter." No, it matters to the coaches. This
Yeah.
this
right,
is the stuff they go over.
right. There you go. So that was, some of the offense in a nutshell, and what we've been seeing, and at times we've seen this throughout the year. And you're right on the other touchdown. I think you could argue that AJ Brown was even more open
He was. And by the way, that
on
was the
that one.
design of the play. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And he winds up throwing it to DeVonta Smith in the corner. Just making it harder on himself. And you hope that stuff doesn't catch up to the team at some point when they play better teams. And they've got a better team coming to town on Sunday in the Steelers. Let's transition to the defense, Greg. I think you made a point to our Patreon members that Eagles fans have gotten spoiled by great defense because you got questions as to quote unquote what went wrong at times, and the Eagles really only gave up 16 points. But Adam Thielen did have over 100 yards receiving, and the Panthers converted on some pretty significant third downs. What was your overall defensive takeaway from the tape?
Um, I would say not quite as good. It wasn't as quite as dominating as it had been in recent games.
Mhm.
Still good. It wasn't like they got, killed. But again, obviously, it's funny how games play out. And so often you can't coach to one, individual plays. You coached for every play to be done the right way. But I mean, on that play that Leggett dropped, the Eagles went zero. And Slay was beaten to the post by Leggett, who dropped a really good ball by Young. It should have been a touchdown. And we'd probably, a lot of fans would be having a different conversation right now.
Yeah.
But I would say overall, it was a solid performance, but not as dominating as it had been. And one of the Patreon guys brought up Cooper DeJean getting beat. Well, Adam Thielen's been doing this a long time. He's pretty good at this stuff, and he's really good as a subtle, nuanced, detailed route runner. And he got DeJean a couple of times, once on the out and up, once on an inbreaker. I mean, that's going to happen. It doesn't mean Cooper DeJean had a bad game or isn't any good. It's going to happen against veteran receivers like
He
that.
actually gave up plays. Yeah, shockingly,
Yeah.
he actually gave up
Yeah.
plays. Greg, let's start up front. Chuba Hubbard didn't have a huge game. He had, I think, like 92 yards, but he had a number of runs of 4 yards or more.
Yeah.
Jordan Davis is a guy that is just, you spoke very highly of him the game before.
Well,
How
yeah.
did what did this look like?
Well, and again, I don't want to make this a Jordan Davis, let's knock Jordan Davis, but I think,
Sure.
He's played almost 3 years now. I think it's pretty much declared as to what he is. I mean, he's declared what he is. We're not making this up,
Yeah.
and they told you what he is. He does, he's a run defense player who's very inconsistent week to week in what you're going to get from him in run defense, but that's all he is. I mean, I thought the most telling point is when the Panthers got the ball with 2:58 left in the game, and he's not on the field for any play on that final drive. He's not, he's only played one snap all year of 3rd and 6 plus in a meaningful part of a game, and they've played 13 games. So, at the end of the day, while he's had good plays and he's flashed and he's probably had a couple of games that, Adam, were good games, beyond just a couple of plays. When all's said and done, they played 13 games. If he's had 3 good games, that's what he's had. Then he's had, a few splash plays in other games. But he's just, I think we have to kind of say that he's not really what they hoped he'd be.
Yeah. To put it in perspective, we talked about the Baltimore game. We did some clips last week. I thought he was, in his limited snaps, impactful when he was on the field.
Yes.
And
that was a good game.
And there were plenty of times, to your point, Greg, where he's playing those many snaps or more. And I wouldn't say he's bad. He's just not impactful, right? And then this time against the Panthers, my takeaway was I just felt that there were snaps where he wasn't very good. He got hot. He was moved by one man, like the left guard whose name is escaping me.
His tendency to play high, it's very hard to get rid of because that's a natural body reaction. That's not a technique, use your hands better. That's just a natural body reaction. Right. And he just plays high.
How about Vic Fangio's choice of scheming in this game?
In terms of what?
Did you think he was more man, more zone, more cover one, more quarters? Did he? I know in the fourth quarter, I think he had to adjust a little bit there, like you mentioned on that last drive. But in general, how did he prefer to have a look?
I mean, I thought that, look, they're not necessarily, as we know, a heavy pressure team. So they're, you're not going to see a lot of pressure necessarily. They'll do that, in bits and pieces, but they are a pretty high percentage cover one defense. And they played a lot of man coverage in this game. That cover one was their most played coverage in this game by a pretty wide margin.
Yeah.
So we've seen him mix and match, clearly depending on the opponent. I don't think there's any true receivers on the outside. Thielen tends to line up in the slot. Any true outside receivers on this team because, Legett's a rookie who's, he's not there yet. And Moore was the third receiver. So, he clearly chose to play a good amount of cover one.
Yeah, it seems to me, and I don't know if yet this is a thing or just randomly, but I feel like when Vic has played up against teams that have one guy that could really beat you, he's been more prone to want to be okay with playing cover one man. He played a lot of cover one man against the Bengals because remember T. Higgins didn't play in that game.
Right, right.
So yes, Jamar Chase would get his yards, but they did a nice job on everybody else, and they got
I
some
mean,
pressure.
they played a higher percentage of cover one in this game than what their season percentage had been. I know
Right.
by a pretty significant amount.
Yep.
Hmm.
So we'll see what that means for a Steelers game where if George Pickens doesn't play, you probably don't have too many guys, maybe outside of Mike Williams, who
Well,
you're
just
afraid can
giving a
really do
very
something.
quick tease,
Yep.
the larger question, and we'll get into this in more depth on Sunday, is the Steelers are a heavy multiple tight end personnel team. Heavy. They may lead the league when you add their use of 12 and 13 personnel. So now you get into the Cooper DeJean question. So
Speaking
we'll
of
get
heavy,
more into that on Sunday.
Darnell Washington is a big dude.
Yeah,
Watch him on. He might be close
they-
to 300 pounds, by the way.
but they play Freiermuth, Washington, and Hayward, and sometimes Mikael Pruitt. I mean, they got 4 tight ends that play meaningful snaps.
Do you remember Zach Gentry was like 6'8"?
Yeah. So anyway, we'll get into
Yeah.
that on Sunday. But that
Yep.
gets into how the Eagles want to play personnel wise.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All right. Speaking of Cooper DeJean, Greg, as you mentioned, Adam Thielen's a pretty good wide receiver in this league. He's a veteran. He's a savvy route runner, and Cooper got a little bit of schooling, which he even admitted after the game. So this is
Is this the out and up?
yes. So you
Yeah, I mean,
want to go
so-
ahead and diagnose?
Yeah, he's in the slot. It's a 2-by-2 set. The strength of the formation is to the right side of the formation, because that's 2 wide receivers as opposed to although now they're bringing the tight end over, so it becomes 3-by-1.
Mm-hmm.
So keep in mind this. I believe they ended up playing quarters here, but
Run it, and
I'll
we'll
explain
see.
that in a sec. I'm just checking. I'm pretty sure they ended up playing quarters. But here, let's just run it, Geoff.
Sure.
Mm.
No, they're going to match here.
This is
Okay.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to match. They're playing man. So
Right.
that's his guy. I mean, he's got him. And,
So
he
let's go
runs.
into it. Is it hand usage here, Greg? Is it technique, or is it just he hasn't seen enough savvy route
No,
running
he's-
like that?
He's
Wow.
he's anticipating the outcut. I mean, it's not,
Right here. Yep. Yep.
Look, Thielen sells it really well. He cuts outside,
Mm-hmm.
thinks the ball's going to come out, and
Mhm.
then he turns it up.
Yep.
He just got beat. It's
Good throw too by Young.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really nice throw. Nice route. I mean, maybe in another times as you try to get a little bit more contact with Thielen at the line of scrimmage,
Mm-hmm.
as the ball's being snapped. Who
Reroute him.
knows? Who knows? What they're
Yeah,
coaching
and
people
I
to
guess
do.
what I'd say is I don't know. I don't know necessarily how they teach that.
Mhm.
So I don't know if they want him to try to get his hands on him more. I don't
Mhm.
know the answer to that.
Right. Yeah. Good move
that
right here, though.
yeah. So that comes down to a teaching point now. I don't know, but he clearly thought that it was going to be an out route, and
Mm-hmm.
he was going to play. He was going to get underneath the out route and make a play, and it turned out to be an out and up.
All right. One last thing I wanted to ask you about this. You see how the linebackers switch at the last second?
Yeah.
What was the clue that they should do that?
My guess is it's a function of strength. They may want Bond to the passing strength and
Mhm.
Dean to the not to the passing strength. That would be my guess.
Right. Even against
So
man.
now when it becomes 3-by-1, the 3 receiver side, it's clearly the passing strength and the tight ends to that side. So it could be a function of the tight end as well.
Gotcha.
I don't know, again, different teams do different, because right now the tight end is obviously before the shift, the tight end is to the other side, and that's where Bond is. Then
Right.
the tight end shifts and they switch. So it could be a function of the tight end.
I observed this a couple of times, even against a run, which they may have thought was a pass.
Yeah,
It
I'd have
turned
to
into a
study.
run.
Like I'd have to look just for that to see if Bond, normally lines up to the tight end side.
Mhm.
Because Dean is not going to match up very often to tight ends. He just doesn't have the size.
Right. In general, I mean, do you feel like in this case, Cooper DeJean will learn something about routes? And I mean, there's got to be a learning experience for that in him and for this.
I'm just trying to be honest here. I don't
Mhm.
view this as a problem. I mean, Thielen
You're
ran
going to
a
get
great
beat,
route.
right?
He
Yeah.
could have beaten a veteran corner there. He was looking for the outcut. He was going to play the outcut, and he didn't get the outcut.
Got
So
it.
could that be a case where, in a meeting during the week, you go over it and you say, hey, be aware out of this formation, they like to do that. That could be one of those things. But I don't view that play as like a negative or a problem with Cooper DeJean.
There you go. All right, last one that we'll go through really quickly. This is the Bryce Young interception close to the end of the first
Oh
half.
yeah.
And I think a lot happens on this play, so I'm going to let you go ahead and diagnose now.
Yeah, this was a lot did happen here. First of all, they had Vaughn aligned on the ball on the edge.
Hmm.
Um, and what they did is they ran a four-man sim pressure. And even though Vaughn was on the edge, Vaughn and Smith dropped out.
Right.
Okay. So they're running, just a four-man pass rush here.
Hmm.
And it was a
Is that what you
man
refer to as
coverage
lurk?
concept.
Is that
Okay.
lurk defenders, Greg? Is that what the two droppers?
Yeah, it's man coverage, but they
Hmm.
have two underneath lurk defenders who
Right.
are zone players. Okay. Um, and they can respond to any in-breaking routes, as you see Smith will here when he gets the crosser from, I believe that might be the tight end.
That is. I believe
Yeah,
that's JT.
that's
Yeah.
Jatavion Sanders.
Yeah.
So they were in a 1-by-3 set here. But they're
Hmm.
playing man. They just have two underneath zone lurkers. It was Nakobe Dean who added in as the fourth rusher in
Right.
this sim pressure.
Hmm.
And actually, Carter was a big factor here because Carter, who ended up rushing against the right tackle Moten, who's
Hmm.
not very good, by the way, he was able to push him back into the
Right.
pocket, which forced Young, who's 5'11", to have to throw the ball with a little more height than he
Yep.
ultimately wanted to, because he's going here for Thielen in the slot. Thielen
Hmm.
working against DeJean. And it's still a tight throw. Is it possible it could have been complete with a perfect throw? Possibly. This is
Hmm.
not bad coverage, though, at all.
No, I think DeJean's coverage was pretty good here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And because he had to lift the throw to get it over Carter, pushing back Moten into the pocket, the ball, was
Hmm.
overthrown, and Gardner Johnson, made a good play.
We can
So
take a
this was
look at
good
it
team
up front.
defense right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you
Here's your
can
point.
you'll see from the end zone here that the reason why Carter ends up on the tackle is because of the sim pressure with Dean coming inside,
Yep.
essentially looping behind Williams. So
Right.
in order for that to happen, Carter has to get out of there, so he works outside.
Yep. If you're down a couple of edge defenders like the Eagles are, this is a way to get a different player on the edge and let him go to work.
And you can
Great
see
pressure.
Young, it's really clear from this angle,
Yep.
guys, that Young sort of really had a lift over the top of Carter.
Yeah.
He couldn't
Little
throw it
jump
with his
pass.
normal delivery, and that's why the ball sailed on him.
All right. Great stuff, Greg. Thank you so much for that. And we'll bring you back again next
Do the
week.
pregame. Looking forward to it. We got a big
And
one.
of course, we'll see you on the Inside the Birds pregame show. All right. For Greg Cosell and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. You've been watching Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell.